Well, good day. Welcome to another episode of the Rob Report. I'm your humble host, Robert BOBTV Brown. What's good, YouTube? What's good, Facebook? What's good, Twitter? How you doing today? Well, here we have Mr. Tough Guy right here, the man who would be president. And no, I'm not talking about Joe Biden. I'm not talking about Trump. I'm talking about Governor Cuomo. Now, Cuomo had made a statement that I totally agree with him on today, and that was about responsibility. Now, the mark of a good leader is they always take responsibility. Mark of a coward is they throw the blame of everything on everybody else but themselves. But in this case, I guess he found out in some kind of book that you got to change your ways, that if you want to be a leader, you have to take responsibility. And in this case, he did. Now, a couple of things that Cuomo did today. Let me see if I can pull it up. Give me a moment. By the way, how are you doing today? A couple of things Cuomo did today is he extended death benefits for those who were in the front line of the COVID battle. A good thing that he's doing. We're going to take a look at that today. And then we're going to also talk about responsibility, because right now we're about to reach 100,000 deaths so far because of COVID. Now that is bad. 100,000 is bad. But there's other things that cause up to this date that's almost double, triple that, but I'm not going to go into that. You can see the other things that are way that these deaths, sad as they are nowhere near the deaths of other ailments and sickness and diseases that's going on in the United States today. Just the United States, not talking about the world. But it still is horrible. Almost 100,000 people dead because of this crisis. Yet you got the different parties are trying to push blame on people. Now, Trump has to own his own. He has to take some ownership in these deaths. He has to take some ownership in these deaths for the simple fact of him not getting the proper knowledge, or him not accepting the proper knowledge, or not listening to his advisors or whatever. But he's not alone in this. Everybody on Capitol Hill, from the House to the Senate, they have their responsibilities too. The cabinet of Donald Trump, they have their responsibilities too. CIA has a responsibility. FBI has a responsibility. CDC has a responsibility. So you can't put it all on Trump. Now, I know you want to use this to try to beat him in an election, but you got to own responsibility too. I mean, like I say, do what you feel you got to do to beat them, but you got to take some responsibility. Nancy Pelosi got to take responsibility too, because she's the Speaker of the House, and she have more worldwide influence than Trump could ever have when it comes to diplomacy. Chuck Schumer do. Mitch McConnell do. All of them have a responsibility in this. So to come up with a commercial to push the blame that Trump is the reason why we have these 100,000 people dead is not wise. And it's not going to get you anywhere, because you all are responsible for these 100,000 people dead. You all could have came out and called out and demand and push laws. And the only thing he could do is veto it. I mean, I don't understand. People act like this man is all knowing. He is not all knowing. He is not all powerful. He does have a limit. In this government, we have checks and balances. Nobody has, nobody has the really final say so. He can do an executive order. He can veto a bill, but the Congress can overturn it. Then what you got? So nobody can point the blame concerning this COVID crisis. And that is what Governor Cuomo was talking about in this particular article in Forbes magazine. It said, we all fail. The real reason behind New York Governor Andrew Cuomo's surprising confession. This is an article in Forbes, May 26, 2020, came out 1:24 a.m. It said, on Monday, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo made an admission that is rare to hear from America's top leader, that he got it wrong. So he admitted he got it wrong. Guess what? Trump need to admit that he got it wrong. And guess what? The House and the Senate has to admit they got it wrong too. Because they are all in this together. World affairs don't stop with one man. World affairs stop with everybody that run this country. And that's the legislative branch, and that's the executive branch. Judicial branch, not that much. But the legislative branch and the executive branch they have to take responsibility for these 6 figures in deaths that's coming up in June. But Cuomo did take the initiative and say, hey, got it wrong. Speaking at a news briefing on the coronavirus pandemic at the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum in New York City on Memorial Day. Now you look at that. Let me pull it up. Let me look at that. Now that's a good presidential photo pic, right? He looked presidential. He looked hateful as a mug on here, boy. Look at that. Bro, why you got all these wrinkles in your forehead and frowning up? Jeez, man, smile. You need a hug. Anyway, let me let you into this article. Give me a moment. Cuomo addressed questions about when New York would more fully reopen. When asked about whether there was a specific time for the next phase of the opening, the governor of the Empire State had a surprisingly candid response. He said, now people can speculate. People can guess. I think next week. I think 2 weeks. I think a month. The New York governor said, I'm out of that business because we all fail at that business. And then he said, right? Keyword, we all. He has a responsibility. The legislators in the state of New York has a responsibility. You do realize that we have CIA agents right here in New York. Some of the most highly and sophisticated intelligence agencies is here in New York. What about their responsibility? Some of them probably listening to me right now. We all have a responsibility. He said, all the early national experts. He said, here's my projection model. Here's my projection model. They were all wrong. They were all wrong. Cuomo continued, there are a lot of variables. I understand that. We didn't know what the social distancing would actually amount to. I get it. But we all were wrong. So I'm sort of out of the guessing business, right? Cuomo comments were in part an echo of many Americans' frustration with the University of Washington Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation model. The widely regarded COVID-19 model has informed the decision of many states and local leaders and has had shifting projections of infection and death rate as the country instituted a range of intervention intended to stop the spread of the virus. There have also been ongoing concern about the effectiveness of the nation's testing regime, as well as wariness at some of the guidance of the nation's top health experts. Yet in being so candid with his own assessment of the model, as well as his unwillingness to continue guessing at the future, the governor of the hardest hit state in the country acknowledged what Americans have come to appreciate, that pandemic projections are not certainties. They are often flawed, yet they are also provided the best guess of how the pandemic might evolve depending on a variety of factors. While New York continues to rebound from its peak on Saturday, it reports that daily deaths fell below 100 for the first time in 2 months. And nonetheless, he suffered substantially in the early days of the pandemic. The state has reported over 362,000 COVID-19 cases and over 23,000 deaths from the highly contagious virus. All of this comes as the nation nears 100 deaths from across the country. Amidst a pandemic that has rapidly spread across the country, Governor Cuomo earned high praise for his high-profile response, and his televised news conference have rivaled those of the president, which was must-see TV. Much of the praise for Cuomo has been a result of both his decisiveness action early in the outbreak and as well as his candid assessment of the challenges facing New Yorkers. He also didn't hesitate to criticize the federal government and its leaders when making a case for medical resources he felt New Yorkers desperately need. But in his comments on Monday, Cuomo may have elevated his leadership even further. While many of his critics may seize on his comments as an illustration of New York governor's shortcoming, his confession of failure was actually a striking act of leadership at a time when many political leaders refused to admit miscalculation. By acknowledging that both the pandemic projections and some of the subsequent guesswork of how to respond to them were wrong, Cuomo showed a remarkable amount of humility that is all too rare in today's gotcha political environment. Now, understand, I told you a long time ago, the mark of a leader is to take responsibility. I didn't say the mark of a great leader, the mark of a leader. All right. So you can take responsibility, but if you continue to go down that road and things just keep messing up, even though you keep taking responsibility for it, where does that put you then? Governor Cuomo made a lot of mistakes. And to this day, he got a lot of mistakes. And one of them, I hit him on hard every day. Trump has made a lot of mistakes. His whole presidency is full of mistakes. Every now and then he'll get it right and I'll give him credit on certain things. But his whole presidency and the decisions he made is a mistake. Now, they want to hit hard on Trump for the fact that he stopped people from coming here from Asia. He stopped people from coming here from Europe. At one time, Democratic leadership was saying he was acting in xenophobia when he was not acting in xenophobia. If he did not make those two calls, we would have still been having people flying into this country from Europe and Asia, bringing more of those disease, probably would have been more of a mutated version of the disease and caused more of a havoc. So that was a right thing for him to do. You can holler and scream xenophobia all you want. It's still the right thing to do. Now, him not taking responsibility for the deaths are the wrong thing to do. What y'all want to focus on is him taking treatment as prophylactic. That ain't got nothing to do with you or me. That's that man's own business. And if his supporters want to be dumb enough to take it without seeking their doctor or looking at evidence that it actually worked, that's on them. Ain't nothing you can do about it. Most of these people are grown. But I thought y'all didn't want him to be the president, right? Let him do his thing. If it don't work, then he's going to have to step down because he'll be sick as a dog and he can't be president. I don't wish that on nobody. I believe everybody has the ability to humble themselves and make a sound decision majority of the time, if not once in the blue. Even with Cuomo, I have my problem with Trump. I have my problem with Cuomo. Cuomo is one of the biggest anti-unionist person. He tried to act like he's down with the union, but no, he's more down with corporations more than union activity than anybody has been in this state for a long time. His daddy wasn't even that hard on union activism. So I got my issue with Cuomo. I got my issue with Cuomo dealing with the medications that's out available right now that can keep people from getting into the hospital. The medication that Trump gave him to put into to help deal with COVID, he used all of it on severe cases. And you don't use medication on severe cases when it's designed for when you're first diagnosed. The rates of survival, the rates of turnover, the rates of healing is 90% when you do this in a diagnosis situation. When you first diagnose, if you take the medication in 5 days, there's a 90% chance rate you will be cleared of COVID within 10 days. But no, they want to use all the medication on severe studies and don't get no results. And then they cancel the program. So any death that goes for any numbers that go higher up from this $100,000 in June, any death in New York, I put on his head and I'm going to call him out on it. At least Trump is trying to look into other medications. Y'all joking him for it. Joking ain't going to do nothing. There's a proper way to use the medication, not at the end of somebody in ICU or in intensive care. This is medical treatment for when you're first diagnosed. Now, I've been over that too long. But these are things that we're doing when we're talking about responsibility and how we're messing up. You are messing up. You got it wrong. Most of the hospitals got it wrong. NYU said you got it wrong. St. Francis said you got it wrong. Multiple doctors around the country say you got it wrong. This is not for intensive care or severe cases of COVID. The medication is for those who get diagnosed with COVID. There's simple medication that'll clear them in less than 10 days. And until we get this right, deaths are going to continue to happen. Now we're opening up the cities in different regions. People are going to go back to normal. Guess what's going to happen? People are going to contract COVID. The numbers are going to go high and the deaths are going to go back high up. When you need to do this the smart, ethical way. Testing, treatment, then you go back. Testing, treatment, then you go back. You don't go back until you get tested, until you get treated. If you got it. If you don't have it, go back once you get tested. You can go back to work, you can go back to normal. Find out you're positive, stay your butt home, take the medication until you're negative. It's simple. Why are we complicating this? And if you do your studies on what they're saying about the CDC and the World Health Organization is saying about this particular medication, download the document yourself and read it. It did not say anything about it's dangerous for all people if they take it. It said it's dangerous for people in a severe situation because their hearts and their lungs are already ravaged. Why are you going to give them something that's going to cause it to flutter? That don't make sense. You give it to people when they're still pretty much healthy and the disease haven't caused the impact right away. We're talking about responsibility now. Now, at least Cuomo admit, I got it wrong. You all got it wrong. Trump got it wrong. Pence got it wrong. House and Senate, Democrat and Republicans, they got it wrong. All of them have the ability to get access to intelligence to find out what's going on in any part of the world. All of them do. Most of them used to work in intelligence agencies. And you telling me they don't have the power to find out what's going on across the world with buddies in the intelligence agency? They talked all that Russia stuff. You can't tell me you didn't know what was going on in the world concerning this disease? Get out of here with this stuff. But his comments on Monday, Cuomo may have elevated his leadership even further. While many of his critics may seize on his comments as an illustration of the New York governor's shortcoming, his confession of failure was actually a striking act of leadership at a time when many political leaders refused to admit miscalculations. By acknowledging that both the pandemic projection and some subsequent guesswork of how to respond to them were wrong, Cuomo showed a remarkable amount of humility that is all too rare in today's gotcha political environment. In order for America to successfully navigate what will undoubtedly be a long fight against deadly coronavirus, I'm telling you now, you're making it long because you're doing it the wrong way. It will need to embrace a more nuanced appreciation of how its leaders and all of us are doing to make the best informed decision possible. By having the courage to admit that mistakes were made, Governor Cuomo set an important example of what reflective leadership can look like on the national stage, and in doing so, he may have also helped give America one more reason to feel optimistic about the way our leaders can respond to a crisis. Yes, in the early days of this pandemic, many of us has made mistakes and even failed. But learning from our mistakes quickly could be our greatest success of all. Now, to Seth Cohen, and I'm going to tweet yourself because I want to have a talk with you. What I would like for you to do, Seth Cohen, is I would like for you to look at the studies from NYU Langone, the studies from St. Francis, the studies from Northwell, the studies from Lenox Hill, all New York hospitals where you're residing in. Take your pen, take your paper. Then again, you're a contributor. In other words, you're a person just like me that could put an article in the Forbes magazine. But why don't you go do some investigation on the medication that people are using right now in its improper environment that is healing people 90%. 90%. Because if you don't, you're going to realize you made the biggest mistake of all, miscalculating medical treatment. Because right now they've been using the medical treatment in severe cases. I understand you want to try to find something to stop the progression of the disease from killing somebody in intensive care. Well, you're going to have a long fight on that one. The goal is to keep people from intensive care. What are you doing to keep people from intensive care? What are you doing to keep people out of the hospital? This is one of the greatest mistakes that New York is going to make and this country is going to make if they don't get it right. This disease can be managed. This disease can be controlled just like any other disease. And we can get back to normal. But as long as you're playing politics trying to get some kind of long-term vaccine that most Americans not going to take, and you can't force them, or otherwise we're not America no more. We're a dictatorship. When there's medication right now, old medication that's not harmful in the beginning stages, is only harmful when you're in a hospital bed and your heart and your lungs already been jacked up. If you don't get this right, you're going to fail. Don't politicize this. Trump want to take the medication prophylactically and see if it works. Let him do it. It may work. It may not work. Who in the hell are you to tell us that it won't? Well, it haven't been proved. Well, let him prove it. That's why people take it. They want to prove it to you. Let the man do his thing. He's a grown man. Me, I'm not taking it prophylactically unless it's proven I can take it prophylactically. But I would take it as if I end up finding out I had it. I'm not going to wait to give it a chance to progress in my system. And then when I'm halfway dead, then they're going to try to give it to me then. Because that's when they're giving it to people, when they're halfway dead. No, give me to me sooner. The rate of me healing is 90%. The rate of people beating this thing, if they're treated among diagnosis, is 90%. You realize most medical institutions, if they can get a 10% survival rate off of medication, that's a game changer. Don't go 20, don't go 30, and God knows don't go 40. NYU Legon treated people who came in, inpatients now, whether it's from emergency room or walk-ins. They treated these patients with those 3 meds, and it cut mortality rate 44%. That's almost 50%. 44%. This has been studied. This is documented. Documented. This is a fact. You can download the report, look it up. You can go to Legon and talk to the doctors. You can talk to the scientists. You can talk to, but no, you don't want to do that. You don't want to prop up some vaccine because it's going to make some people some money. You're willing to risk death, try to make some people money. I'm talking about responsibility. Because now everybody has a responsibility. That's why I always talk about this up here. Because you ain't going to say I didn't tell you. It's your choice whether you want to take it or not. But you're not going to say I didn't tell you. We're talking about owning up our responsibilities in this COVID crisis. We're almost at 100,000 deaths in the United States. And 100, probably at least 20, 30. You're talking about 30,000 deaths could have been cut if Trump would have acted quickly. Probably so, and he need to own responsibility. But what about the 30,000 that could have been stopped when you gave them the medication once they were diagnosed? Like you do any other medication, any other sickness, any virus or major cold you got, and you got the flu or whatever, you go to the doctor check you out, he'll give you some meds, go home, take these for 5 days, 2 tablets a day, come back and see me for a checkup, and then we'll go from there. That's normal. That's how this disease can be managed, but you got to change the way you're treating people. You're treating them on the latter end when they're almost dead instead of treating them at the beginning to keep them from seeing death. And until you change that, the numbers are going to continue to rise. And until you actually read the reports and stop letting these news nutwings misquote the CDC, misquote the WHO, because every one of those statements they made about the dangers of one particular drug were in a intensive care severe situation. And the testing was an intensive care severe situation. Of course, you're not going to see a miraculous in that situation. They only use one drug. But these 3 drugs at the beginning is cutting mortality rate 90%. And these 3 drugs used in a inpatient hospital situation pre-ICU is cutting mortality rates 44%. Those are way above game changers. Now, I put this on here because Cuomo is trying to take responsibility, and he shut down that particular program because he figured, well, we tried it in the hospital with severe cases and then we didn't see positive or negative. Do that mean you need to stop? Maybe you're looking on the wrong end of when you need to treat these people, Governor. Why don't you listen to the doctors who are treating people all over the country that's doing this among diagnosis? When they first find out they're positive, they're giving them this treatment and a 10-day regimen, certain amount a day. And in 10 days, these people are coming out COVID negative. Responsibility, we got to change it up. You're looking in the wrong place. The main people you need to really focus on is people who are catching it every day, not people who already caught it and in a hospital. Now, Cuomo did do a couple of good things today, and I'm going to give him credit for that. But let's go back. Cuomo today at the Intrepid signed into law state and NYC death benefits for frontline workers who die from coronavirus. I hate seeing that. See, you guys joking Trump because he's taking it prophylactically. There is a study at NYU, leg on again, that says there's promising results of using this prophylactically for those healthcare workers or those who deal with people who have COVID every day. What is prophylactically? That means you're taking the treatment to keep from getting the disease. It's not a cure. There is no cure for COVID. Only treatment. So the president admitted that he's taking that and people just went crazy. Oh, that's dangerous. That ain't what the CDC said. Stop with that lie. It said that if you are in a situation where you have a history of heart issues, it's dangerous. It could increase your heart issues. It can increase heart problems if you take it when you have a history of heart issues. Read the document and stop misquoting it. It also says that if you take it long term with certain conditions, pre-existing condition, it may not fare well for you. Also, it said if you're in a condition where you're in severe COVID-19 patient and you take that medication, it could kill you. So could other medications that they're given, like remdesivir and all that. It still have a chance to kill you. The message is stop giving it to people in that situation because it was never created for that situation. The medication that's been touted as hopeful was when you give it to people among diagnosis. 5 days, within 5 days of them knowing that they got it. And it's not long-term. It's long-term use when you're using it without a doctor prescribing it for you a certain amount of days, a certain amount of volumes, whatever. A certain amount of days. That is the missing point. You can't go out there and get this stuff without seeking a doctor. The doctor got to tell you what you can take, the amount you can take. You can't just take whatever you want to take. You're getting this wrong. But because we got people who don't want to keep an open mind and don't want to listen to the doctors who treating people on the front line, yet they got people out here dying and catching it, people close to me. You're willing to provide death benefits for those who die. That's good. I appreciate it. They deserve a death benefit, and they deserve a worthy death benefit. And if they got kids, you need to make sure their kids can go to college. Families of frontline workers killed by coronavirus will be entitled to government-backed benefits, Governor Cuomo announced Monday. The governor, holding his daily briefing aboard the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum in honor of Memorial Day, said public health workers, police, firefighters, transit workers, and medics deserve more than just a thank you for their work during the pandemic. We will continue to show respect to our frontline heroes, not just with words, but with action, Cuomo said. I want to make sure we repay their debt, Cuomo said. The least we can do, what we must do for their families, we should make sure their families get death benefits. Money from the benefits will be provided by local and state pension funds, the governor said. Antibody testing, which can potentially show whether someone has been exposed to the virus, has revealed a lower rate of infection for many frontline workers in New York City. However, hundreds of health and transit workers, cops, firefighters, and EMS responders died over the past 3 months as the city became the epicenter of a pandemic. Mayor de Blasio recently came out in support of legislation that would provide line-of-duty death benefits for survivors of municipal employees who die of COVID-19. A City Hall spokeswoman tweeted out a thank you to Cuomo for endorsing our plan to provide line-of-duty benefits to city workers lost in COVID-19. Every day, particularly of Memorial Day, it's so important to stop and remember those we've lost and do all we can to support the family they left behind, de Blasio spokeswoman Freddie Goldstein wrote. Nice young lady. I had a chance to meet her. There were no immediate details about Cuomo's proposal, but a bill being weighed by state lawmakers this week would guarantee the family of ununiformed workers such as cops, firefighters who died from COVID-19 between March 1st and the end of the year would get the following first responder full pension. Family of other public workers who died from COVID-19 get 50% of life according to the measure. Typically, beneficiaries only get pensions benefits for 3 years. So in other words, if you're in uniform, we're going to make sure you get all of it. But if you're not a uniformed person, like cops and firefighters, you're only going to get 50%. That doesn't seem fair. But let me keep going. Cuomo also called on federal governments to step up and provide hazardous pay to frontline workers. Well, that's what they're doing with the HEROES Act, or at least trying. I'm calling on the federal government to provide dedicated funding to hazardous pay for frontline workers, he said. They have earned it by showing up and risking their health and lives for all of us. Hospitalization, admission, and intubations are down across the state, the governor said. Another 96 New Yorkers died from the virus on Sunday, a slight dip from the 109 killed a day earlier. So you're telling me 2 days, we got over 200 people that died. I'm going to pause there. The only way we're going to slow up the deaths in this city, let alone this country, let alone the world, is when people are diagnosed, treat them. Stop making a mockery of medication that works. Stop lying on medication that works. Stop fear-mongering on medication that works. All because you worked it the wrong way and it didn't work the way you wanted to work. Now you're saying it don't work. You're wrong. You're wrong. Ahead of a briefing, Cuomo held a moment of silence and laid a wreath for service members lost and veterans being honored on Memorial Day. The governor warned that those taking advantage of the holiday weekend should take basic steps to help prevent the spread of the virus, such as maintaining social distancing and wearing a mask. You can increase activity without increasing virus spread, he said. Be smart. You know, I talk about the mask, and I will talk about the mask until I'm blue in the face because they work. And I agree with him. As long as you got on a mask and I got on a mask, I cough, you won't get my cough. You cough, I won't get your cough. Have a mask on. But Cuomo, there's some things that's more, just as much as important, if not more, than a mask. Because we can get to the days where we don't have to have a mask all the time. Over the weekend, Cuomo announced that the campgrounds and RV parks would be allowed to open as the summer get underway, and many regions of upstates are looking forward to entering the second phase of the state reopening plan. I have no problem with that. Usually when you go camping, y'all not right on top of each other. So I have no problem with campgrounds being open. I have no problem with certain beaches being open if they're not known to be super crowded beaches. On Friday, a majority of the city excluded, is now in phase one, meaning that construction and manufacturing businesses are allowed to operate. On Friday, Cuomo said the Mid-Hudson and Long Island regions are on track to start the fourth phase reopening process this week. The governor declined to provide a date for when he thinks the city will be ready, saying, "I don't want to guess. I'm out of that business because we all failed." Actually, he's going to put that responsibility on de Blasio. He ain't going to touch it. You know, they just got that hate relationship. Cuomo don't want to have nothing to do with New York City, so he's not going to touch it. That's going to end up being up to de Blasio to do. We watched the numbers. We prepared as the numbers dropped, so when the numbers actually hit the threshold, we're ready to go. So he's already believing that once they reopen, the numbers are going to go back up. Cuomo also dashed the hopes of Staten Islanders who argued that since the Bureau has met the state metrics for reopening, it should be allowed to take steps separately from the rest of the Big Apple. I understand that Staten Island mentally, I love Staten Island. I have a lot of friends there, the governor said, but it's not a place until itself for this purpose. The island and its residents are too tied to the rest of the city to separate it out, Cuomo said. If you live in Staten Island, you very well may be working in Manhattan. You're traveling through the New York City area. So Staten Island is a part of New York City. He said, "I get that sometimes every borough will like to succeed and be his own place." But the governor said he too has had thoughts of succession. "I understand sometimes I would like to take the state of New York and succeed, and now I have to deal with the federal government, so I get it," Cuomo added. All right, so Cuomo is handing out, working to get death benefits. Good thing. And those death benefits need to be substantial. And the death benefits for uniform officers should be the same as death benefits for any other person that they're out there working in the front lines, including people who trying to feed people, including people who out here delivering groceries. Everybody should have the same benefit. Now, let me get back to this. Governor Cuomo said we need to take responsibility. I'm going to take responsibility. Then you take responsibility for those deaths that happened yesterday and the day before. And the deaths that happened today, you need to take responsibility for it. Because I am saying it's your fault that they died. Anybody that progressed from knowing that they had the disease in the first 5 days and they end up in the ICU and dying, that's on you, Cuomo. If they end up in ICU, that's on you. Anything happened to these people from the moment they find out that they're COVID positive, I don't care what it is, the suffering of fever, can't breathe, whatever these people go through here in New York, it's going to be your fault because you refuse to give the doctors the opportunity to treat them among diagnosis. Your fault. So since this is the day of responsibility, understand from this day forward in my eyesight, you are playing a Grim Reaper. You might as well have a hood over your head with a sickle because you're refusing the doctors the opportunity to treat people among diagnosis. You stopped a program all because it didn't work for severe patients. It wasn't designed to work for severe patients. But with more elements added to it, it can do some help. I suggest you reopen it, take the restrictions off the pharmaceuticals, and allow these doctors to treat these people who are already positive and starting to show symptoms. See, big money is made is when you're in the hospital. Big money is made is the moment the ambulance come pick you up, the money clock starts. So in the middle of your torture of trying to battle this thing, the other people who run these things, the money merchants, the ambulance and the medical insurance, and you see, you realize that a lot of people are being diagnosed in their death certificate or died because COVID, and it really wasn't COVID. They died because something else. But they figure since they're COVID positive and they had cancer, or they COVID positive and had emphysema, or they COVID positive, they're going to try to say they died of COVID. And it may not have been true. It could have been emphysema. It could have been cancer, but because they're positive, they wrote that on the death certificate, and now that family cannot collect insurance off of that individual. It's a lot of money games going on and a lot of playing with people's lives. And any politician, any religious organization, any businessman should be ashamed of themselves trying to profit or get political gain out of this situation. It's a shame. Now, COVID is not going nowhere. And the chance of getting a vaccine, they're saying, is not till the earliest is probably the end of the year, because we got to go through a bunch of million trials and we got to test this and we got to test that at the same time people dying. Well, that's okay, because the people who are close to death, we need them to test on. You sound like those wacky, crazy, nutso scientists during Hitler ages, who tested their treatments on Jews. And then after it didn't work, throw them into a dirt box, or they took them toward a ditch and shot them and let them and buried them after they got shot. That's not fair. It's not fair at all. Treat these people early, and it'll keep them out of the hospital. Every doctor who's giving them these 3 regimens say, come check them out. Yes, they are doing studies. Yes, some of the studies are already out and all of them positive. The key is you got to diagnose and treat early. And you treat also when they first come in. We can't guarantee that it's going to be very effective when you're already halfway at that point where you're in a ventilator and your lungs and your heart is pretty much damaged. Still give them the 3 regiment, mainly the zinc, and some will be helped. Most may not. But the more you give it to people early, the more people will recover. 90%. 90 freaking percent. And the medication costs less than $20. Versus waiting till they're halfway dead and you're trying to give them remdesivir, which costs thousands of dollars, and making other people rich. Some new medication. We got our priorities wrong, and that is the essence of being irresponsible. So, Governor, I know you want to take responsibility, but understand that you're still being irresponsible when it comes to the medical health of New Yorkers. You are the one who cut Medicare in the midst of a COVID crisis. So you got a lot of reflecting to do, Mr. Governor. Trump got a lot of reflecting to do. The House and the Senate has a lot of reflecting to do. COVID is not going nowhere. So you better learn how to manage it. And there is a way to manage it. You just refuse. You're looking on the wrong end. It's like the guy who want to meet a girl, instead of looking her eyeball to eyeball, he looking at her butt. You ain't getting nowhere like that, man. You ain't going to get nowhere. You might get something worse looking at her butt versus looking into her eyes. That's the wrong place to look, man. You're not going to build nothing looking at a butt. You look into the eyes and get to the heart, you might can get to the butt, But make sure you look into the eyes and the heart. I know that's a crazy analogy, but in all serious notion, you want to take responsibility, Mr. Governor? You want to say we are at fault? Well, guess what? You all will continue to be at fault until you change your method of diagnosis and method of treatment and stop shaming medication that actually works. All so you can get something that may not work. That is the essence of irresponsibility. I'm Robert Brown with the Rob Reporter. I'll let you later. Peace.